Hello, and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That year, this season, is 1971. That movie this season, well, we don't know yet. Could it be McCabe and Mrs. Miller, the movie that we're doing tonight? There's a chance. I would say better than 1 in 16. I'm going to preview what I think everyone thought of this movie. But I could be wrong. People could hate it. Let's talk to those people real quick. But before we do, I should mention that this is a game show. So the people I introduce to you are going to be competing for points and my love. And points on the back end of this particular episode. So don't short it, guys. Don't short how well this show is going to do, because then you'll become a billionaire. Our first contestant tonight in the battle for the heart of not just McCabe, but Mrs. Miller as well, is Greg.
I am here, Ryan, and I have to say, I also think this is going to be
quite a contender.
A very likely candidate to be Movie of the Year.
We have made mistakes in our past, like squeaking Nashville in our 1975 season in as a bonus episode.
What the
that
fuck?
Made us feel dumb.
Yeah.
So we're not going to let that happen again. That person you just heard curse like a duck was Mike.
You goddamn butternut muff diver. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Okay. Mike just got off a Navy ship in 1949, so I'm glad that he could be here with his anchor tattoo.
I'm sorry I'm quoting this movie directly.
And then we need someone else. I think that we should get maybe a technology consultant, a podcaster, and a film enthusiast with a deep love for the bold storytelling and cultural shifts of not just cinema, but 1970s cinema. Chuck is here.
Hey, good to be here. Now, this is a proper sporting house. But seriously, okay. I was glad you guys reached out and that you guys are doing 1971, and you're already giving me films to cover on our next season of the Cinematic Flashback podcast.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that show? I know that you guys just did McCabe and Mrs. Miller kind of recently.
Yeah, we covered McCabe and Mrs. Miller maybe. Well, it seems recent to me, but I'm thinking maybe like May time frame, because we did a back-to-back with Miller and MASH. So I host a show called Cinematic Flashback Podcast with my friend and co-host Matt Sargent, where we go back to 1970s and we rediscover the decade of movies when we were growing up. So we like to try and mix a little bit of history, a little bit of humor, and a lot of love for that era of filmmaking.
We really appreciate you being here, and good luck to you tonight. Chuck, I want to start with you. I specifically did not listen to your McCabe and Mrs. Miller show, so I have no idea what you thought of this movie. Trash or better than trash?
Oh, definitely better than trash. I'm going to probably say that I think like Apocalypse Now, it's almost an experience that you have to go through. Definitely.
Yeah, and maybe more than once to totally get it all.
Yep.
Miller and MASH, which sounds like a British dinner. Which do you prefer out of those two Altmans?
I really have to say that I preferred McCabe. It took me, MASH was a little bit of a curveball because I grew up watching the TV show, but after watching it a couple of times and adjusting to the characters, you could see a lot of the same sinews between the two films.
Yeah, I do think that like the best Altman movie you watch is the second one, once you're on the wavelength, you know? Mm-hmm. Mike, what'd you think of McCabe and Mrs. Miller?
Ryan, we've been podcasting for far too long and have had too many shows. In the past, and I know you claim we did The Conformist in another show in another lifetime.
100% did.
Did we do McCabe and Mrs. Miller? Or did I just watch it as a young buck for fun?
You would never do that. You would watch the Saturday morning cartoon based on the movie, yes. I'm sure, if you could. But no, we did cover it when it was released on Blu-ray, I think.
That's what it was.
70 different podcasts ago.
So all I remembered was like certain shots. I will just be walking my dog and then zoom in on three figures in the snow will hit me, and I'll just sit there and my nose will bleed for a second. I haven't watched it in 12 years, but just like such a growing fondness. And yeah, this might be not just a contender for this season, but for one of my favorite movies of all time.
Wow. Okay. That's got to be a lie. Greg, what do you think? Are Mike and Chuck really over-upping this movie?
If you only see it one time, I could see not being completely blown away. Although the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that was very good. But there is something about watching and rewatching the movie that you begin to love it more and more. I not to copy Mike, but like I think it's probably going to win movie of the year. I think it might be my favorite Western, even though I know it cuts across some Western tropes. I think it might be my favorite Robert Altman movie. I'm just like, I think part of what I like about this movie is I want there to be more. I want it to be like twice as long. I want there to be more. I want it to follow characters that it doesn't get to follow. I want it to include scenes that appear in like the negative space of the movie, because there are things that just like, there are time jumps and you want to know what happens in between them. But that hunger binds me to the movie because those things will never exist. And I can only imagine what they would be like. And it's just, experience is a perfect way to put it, Chuck. You live in this town for 2 hours, but it feels more like you live there for 2 months or something. And it just gets into you and you just spend a lot of time thinking about it. There's like 40 characters and they really are distinct. Even the really small characters are distinct and you end up loving them. Even if they frustrate you, you kind of in a weird way love them.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into how he is able to do that, which is, it's hard to see on your first sit. I honestly think that the first time you watch this movie, it is kind of a tough sit because even if you've seen other Altman movies, because of how little most of the movie gives a shit about how movies are supposed to work, and particularly Westerns. But once you are riding this movie's wave, it's amazing from start to finish. So we might be nipping this season in the bud towards the beginning of the season.
Let's just stop. We don't even need to watch the other movies.
No,
you guys want to move?
You need to watch the other movies. I need more ideas here. Come on.
I'm just finding out there's other podcasts about movies, and I'm a little pissed Chuck's here.
Well, on that note, I want to dive in. So let's take a break. And when we come back, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. When producer David Foster, where Willis at, saw a rough cut of MASH, he immediately offered Altman a chance to write and direct a movie based on McCabe, a novel he just purchased. These two knuckleheads decided to wait until MASH became a huge hit before they pitched it to the studios. And it worked. When Altman asked Beatty to play McCabe, Beatty watched MASH and immediately flew to Los Angeles to sign the contract. Moral of the story? If you want to make a movie in Hollywood, make a hit movie right before that, and you should be fine. The movie tells the story of McCabe, a drunk gambler who moseys into Presbyterian Church, the name of the town and also the name of the only worthwhile building in it. McCabe is about to begin his casino whorehouse empire when who should roll into town but Mrs. Miller, played by Beatty Christie, a madam who pretty quickly convinces McCabe that his entire enterprise will be dead in the water if they don't go into business together. The two are very successful until they are too successful, eventually catching the eyes of robber barons who want to buy them out, or else. Taste buds, I ask you this. Though the crown probably now belongs to Unforgiven, you don't get too far into any conversations about revisionist Westerns without bringing up McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Why does it deserve, I'm not asking does it deserve, why does it deserve, Greg, this spot in the top two?
I think because it imagines a Western landscape that is peopled by three-dimensional beings, not as like the cowboys in a like Wild West stunt show that you can identify their alignment by the color hat they have. You watch these people be unable to articulate what they want or why they want it in a very realistically human way. You watch them detach themselves from the reality of their hard scrabble lives and as a way of protecting themselves, but then that also tears them apart. So it's like they're doing these kind of very advanced, complex, emotional human things with a Western town as the backdrop, not as the everything being like a rootin' tootin' shootout constantly.
Yeah, so it's like a setting, and it has all the things that come with that setting without all of the having to mind every trope that comes with what Hollywood has put into that genre.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think about this, revisionist-wise?
Yeah, I think what Unforgiven is doing as a revisionist Western is making Clint Eastwood's character own up to all the things his other characters did for decades of Westerns. And this is showing all Westerns. Like you said, it's there are no heroes, so we can't follow Gary Cooper into like doing what he's got to do. It's just these people are pieces of shit. These people have moments of poetry in their souls, even if they can't express it, because they are just fleshed out people trying to carve their way in a fucking filthy filthy world.
So fucking muddy, dude.
Everything is muddy, but somehow also cozy. Like as the town builds up, and like it's so cozy with the layers and layers of thick, warm blankets and coats on. Like you're like, yeah, I would eat some stew and 4 eggs and crawl into that corner.
I mean, how important is it, Chuck, that this was not on a Hollywood backlot? You know, like Mike is describing with the mud. How important was it that this was? They literally shot the building of the town in real time as they were building the town.
Yeah, no, that was one of the pieces that made this film very interesting, because and this is where, when you're saying like the first time you're watching it, you don't catch that. But when you watch it later, you start to realize that this film obviously was filmed in sequence, because when McCabe first rides in, the only building really that's tall, that's big, is this church that is forever under construction. And there's nothing else but Sheehan's saloon.
And that saloon, by the way, let's describe the saloon. It is not like you would see in Hollywood Westerns. I don't know which one's more accurate, but this is a cave with a tiny lantern on.
I was going to say,
and people are just in there stinking.
Neanderthals hung out in.
Yeah. This is a relatively new town, but all the buildings are already dilapidated. They built them as slouching wrecks.
It's got that janky bridge that you got to cross over just to get to it.
Okay, that's one thing I have to say about this town. That bridge, although janky, is kind of a technological wonder. And there's a second bridge in that town that is an amazing construction. And I know like the Pacific Northwest is known for having good bridges, but in a town that's absolutely falling down around itself, there are 2 beautiful bridges. And that's like,
they wasted all their money on the bridge budget.
Yeah, where's the bridge builder here? Like, how could he couldn't throw up a house, but like there's like but that's a small quibble.
Well, if you want a house that looks like 8 bridges on top of each other, the bridge builder can do that, Greg, but they're very different things.
Ryan, can I tell you one specific scene that I felt very strongly the energy of revisionist Westernism in it? When the 3 ruffians roll into town, and one of them is very much like the kid figure, like a young guy, and looks like he kind of like takes that hard. He doesn't like to be called young. And
there's a kid in Unforgiven that looks exactly like him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manfred Schultz.
Yeah.
And there's a secondary kid character who is like kind of like the kid of love, who comes and goes through the whorehouse with an enthusiasm that is hard to judge as anything but kind of a beautiful moment in the movie. This guy loves women, and he like is so excited. And we all look up to a small dick king on this show. And that's Keith Carradine, right?
That is a Altman, regular.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the other kid, the kid of evil. But he does something that's like very revisionist Western in my recollection, or in my thinking, which is he throws out like a jug onto the ice, and then he quick draws and shoots at it, but he misses. And I have seen a fair share of Westerns, and the feats of shooting in them and like the weird escalatory, like over the years, the shooting had to get more and more impressive. So I saw a movie where 2 guys shot a tin can. It was in the air for like 35 seconds while they kept shooting it. He throws this jug out onto the ice. He misses it, and then he's like, except I meant to miss it.
He becomes every kid I went to 5th grade with. He's like, well, that was what I meant to do.
It's harder to make it float, actually.
And then his humiliation about that leads to this second thing Altman does. Because Altman is giving us a revisionist Western, but it does kind of find its way back to standard Westerns. It reminds me of that movie, The Producer, that he made, where the first half of the movie is making fun of like
The Player.
The Player. Thank you. These are all the bad moves, stupid moves movies make, and now I'm going to make them in the second half, because it does return. And in this scene, he then does draw down on the kid of love and shoot him down, and obviously he's an accomplished shootist. But that missing the jug, it's like, thank you. Not everybody with a pistol is going to be able to like shoot something very small half a mile away.
It puts Westerns in their place as much as probably the best Western of all time, Back to the Future Part 3. Like, that's really what I think really puts Western on their heels. Let's go back to Chuck. As far as going past the Western tropes and to talk about the frontier expansion and the capitalism that invades this movie, almost like we would see other types of villains in other Westerns, you know, whether it's like white men painted like Indians. Instead, we have businessmen here. How does that change the movie to you?
Well, it happens. It feels like it happens nearly midway, but it does actually happen much sooner than that. But it's representatives of the Harrison Shaughnessy Mining Company. And you have Sears and Hollander. Sears is hilarious because of his last name, and McCabe tells him, "I got a better offer from Montgomery Ward." But
which is crazy how long those companies were around.
Have been around, right? Yes. And Hollander is this. He's a guy. He's been there for 17 years, and he just feels like they sent him out on this snipe hunt, and he deserves a lot more respect. But the thing about it is that they're trying to make this deal with McCabe to sell out his holdings. And they offer him, like what, $5,500 to begin with. And then they're going to add another $750 to it. And, the entire time, McCabe is just saying, no, that's way too low. But what he doesn't realize, or what hasn't really come into McCabe's mind yet, is that these guys aren't taking no for an answer. Yeah. Because whenever he does ask them to come back, Hollander just says, I'm done with this guy. I'm going to go talk to Jake, and we're going to send the boys in, and that's when you get the three ruffians come in.
And they try to broadcast, no, it's not that kind of business deal. It's the kind of business. Right. He touches his nose. He says they're going to be very concerned. But McCabe is, a lot of this movie, McCabe is drunk off his ass. And a lot of the time as the viewer, especially on multiple viewings, you're just shouting McCabe, see where you are. Look at these guys. Yeah. These guys don't want to be in this little terrible town. They want to leave as soon as they can. They want to just say, they want to throw up their hands and say they can't help. But they're killers.
And he's used to being the biggest fish in a pond he built, and he is drunk and wants to bone down with Mrs. Miller. So he's just brushing them off so hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody blames him for that.
He's a capitalist, right? He came in, he wants to make money, but it's interesting. He's constantly spending money and helping the town the whole time. He's making a profit, but putting so much of that profit into making the town better. What McCabe is the lie that modern day capitalists say capitalism is, and what Shaughnessy Collective is what real capitalism is we will fucking kill you if you don't do what we want.
Well, I think that McCabe is who everybody starts off as when they decide to get into business, and then if the opportunity arises, then they become the Shaughnessy company as fast as possible. But Mike, you brought up, when you were talking about Unforgiven, you were talking about the revisionist part of it that we never saw in old Westerns, was this boot of guilt pressing down on your neck. Mm-hmm. Now it's the boot of capitalism. How does that change the movie?
I think it's a more,
or the genre.
It's a more realistic take, right? I think it's an adult take on because even guilt is, we can all handle personal guilt. We've dealt with that, but I think trying to dismantle the system that is making the movie and that we all live in, is a harder needle to thread for Altman.
They seem actively not guilty. In fact, this movie does a really interesting thing where there will be scenes of something objectively horrible going on the screen, and then Elmore Leonard comes in and he sings very nicely, and it's almost shot like a comedy, but somebody's being murdered with a knife, or a woman is almost sexually assaulted, and then so they're that the guilt is completely to the side. They don't really seem to engage with that. It's because this constant negotiation. The movie starts off, one of the first lines that you can actually hear is Sheenan and McCabe arguing over who's going to stand the bottle of whiskey. Mm-hmm. And then after the who's going to stand the bottle of whiskey, does the house get a cut of this gaming that's going on? And then that never stops. The rest of the movie is just moving from one business deal to the next.
And that's also how you deal with the guilt too, is just tons of liquor and maybe a little bit of opium on the side.
It's the distractions. That's the thing.
And prostitutes.
We are using, the movie shows that how we use distractions to protect us from the harsh reality of the world, but how those distractions then, by keeping us out of touch with the harsh reality of the world, lead to our downfall, right? Because then we can't see what's really around us because we're too busy actively distracting ourselves.
The last thing I want to bring up real quick before we move on is the church that is the center of the town, the namesake of the town, and what we think is the only strong structure that gets burnt down. We'll go back to Mike. What do we think we're doing with religion here?
It feels like such a... Sure, we all say we love the church while they are whoring and killing and fighting and gunning after each other and acting like general animals. It's what we have to say this because this is what civilization is. And if we're going to lie to ourselves and say we're civilized and we're making civilization, you have to have a church. But by the end, even the priest is holding McCabe up at gunpoint.
Do you remember in MASH how Frank Burns was extremely obnoxious when they were staying in the swamp. And then you had Father Mulcahy, who was much more digestible and much more easily relatable to with the other members of the cast. And then here in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, you have this church, and you find out at the end of the movie, after the town has already been built up, inside the church, it's empty. There's nobody there. There's just crap strewn all around. And then weirdly, you compare that, say, to the whorehouse, right? Which is these nice, soft, warm colors, this nice music that's being played. People are wanting to go there. And it's such a stark difference between the two.
And it's so welcoming. The whorehouse is like, come here and like you'll be part of the family. And it's just like the town, all the town needed was to be able to see the church from their window. Yeah. Like, and just rest easy in that. Nobody needs to go in.
And you see the Reverend multiple times in the movie, and he stands silent. He stands shattered. And the reason is that the church is an empty structure in this town, and it's unnecessary. But again, Altman twisting everything right at the end. As our hero dies alone in the snow, the town joins together to save the church. And that joining together brings all the people together in a way that they have not been previous to that. And they show, we will save the church. They scream out to save it. They run towards it and they save it. And it brings them together while he is like in the absolute, like alone, and nobody even like, except for the camera, marks the fact that he dies. And so in that weird way, the church does redeem the town. And he's the center. We love McCabe, but he is the center of sin in this town. He is absolutely like the guy in the black hat who comes in to, maybe he builds the town up, but the way he does it is he takes advantage of everybody. And then at the end, we have the church still like triumphant, and it brings the people together. It stands over everyone.
What happens to towns when you introduce somebody like Biff in Back to the Future Part 2, which I think this movie is also commenting on. We have to get out of here. We're going to take a break and do something else. Score update. Greg's in the lead with 7. Mike and Chuck have 6. This is a tight game, but usually it's all coming down to Rushmore. So let's get to that.
Mount Rushmore.
That's right. Folks, it is time for Rushmore, where we build a 4-headed mountain dedicated to something that we love and know a ton about and are scholars in from 1971. And this mountain tonight is going to be 4 heads, but they're going to be dressed better than you've ever seen any head dressed. We're doing fashion, the fashion of 1971. And Chuck, you are our guest, so you're going to start. What absolutely has to be on this mountain?
Boys, I'm telling you what. Why wear pants when you can wear optimism from the knees down? The first thing that came into my mind was throwing some bell-bottom pants on those heads up there. Maybe they're kind of like the back of the heads, you know?
We'll figure that out, yeah. I don't know how that's going to work, but, well, it'll just be somebody's normal head, and they're like, what is that? And then you looked all the way to the bottom of the mountain, and that mountain flares out. That's a pretty safe bet. But I just want to get a couple more before we move on. Mike, what do you got?
This one, look, some of them are famous and the well-known child stars of fashion of 1971, but some are just there quietly doing the Lord's work, and they're on everything. Imagine a lapel so wide you could fucking fly like Dumbo. Just no matter if it's a shirt or a jacket, it's the biggest lapel you've ever fucking seen.
Is that why the lapel mics back then were basically giant megaphones?
Yes.
You just had the room for it, so why not?
You know how you can tell all fashion is cyclical and that like the 70s are kind of coming back? So far, I love both of these things. Yeah. Not ironically, I grew up in the 80s, and so we were like so over the 70s, like, oh, we need something new now. But from here now, a trillion years after that, the 70s are so cool. Big lapels, bell-bottom jeans, gimme
back.
Flare it all.
If I showed up to the next recording with big lapels and bell-bottom jeans, you would just not stop staring at me.
You know what's really messed up? This isn't even the first time in my life that the 70s have
I know. That's how old we are, dude. All right, Greg. 2 strong contenders so far. What do we got?
The 70s looked at sunglasses and said, this is a great invention, keeping the sun out of people's eyes, but they are simply too small. They have to be as big as the goggles that Blue Beetle wears or something like that. They should be huge. You should only guess that there's someone behind those sunglasses. There should be no clues at all.
So far, you guys are describing both very attractive 70s people and clowns.
Honestly, we're describing Tyler Durden in that scene where he goes to save Marla Singer.
All right, before I knock one on, Chuck, give me one more.
I'm going to pull out and put on my peace sign because I am rocking the counterculture, which you can now buy at the local Sears.
That's what shows you that the counterculture is dead, right? Because you could buy it in like a Sears Roebuck or a Monkey Ward's. All right, all good picks, but bell bottoms, you're on. Chuck gets the first point. Mike, what do we got?
We all love a designed blouse, but what if they were heavily beaded and designed in like faux Native American styles, but a peasant blouse that is just beaded up and down, big primary colors, big symbols.
I remember talking about peasant blouses in our 73 season.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. I didn't even know you could say that word.
That's what these ones are specifically, the beaded.
Okay,
that's how I'm separating.
And it says 1971 on the back of the blouse, so don't even worry about it. Okay, we are going to go with big glasses.
Boom.
On the mountain. Greg gets a point. Greg, what do we got?
Okay, this very specifically comes from last week's movie, which was Clute. Hopefully you guys watched that movie. There is a scene where Brie Daniels, Jane Fonda, comes down some stairs, and she's wearing like a blue mini dress, so short skirt, but then Cake, what else did she have? That's right, she had a long jacket. Like a long, almost like trench coat with a huge collar, and that mix of like the big jackets and the short skirts at the same time.
That is a good one. We're going to go with, you know what? I think just the peace sign. I like that we can just put it on anything. It's going to be part of branding. Chuck gets another point. We've got one spot left, so I want to hear from each of you real quick. Chuck, you got one more?
I was going to throw up rose-colored glasses because when you have those giant glasses, you want them to be rose-tinted, but since it's already been said for the large Blue Beetle glasses, I'll skip on that one. So I remember growing up, it was corduroy everything. I mean, if you weren't walking and sounding like you were in snow or something, you just weren't, you just didn't have the right thing on. So, pick your choice. It can be corduroy everything, suits, vests, jackets. It doesn't matter. Just
overalls.
Yeah. Let's
corduroy covered, rose colored glasses.
The perfect grooves to store all your boogies.
Yeah, those are just booger holders.
And you're generating static electricity everywhere you go. You're basically the Shocker from Spider-Man.
That's why hair was so big.
That's why hair was so big? That's why nobody had pubes. They all got shocked off.
Nobody had pubes in the 70s, Ryan. Is that what you're really saying here right now?
Everyone had only pubes, okay?
To the Playboy magazine research room.
God, I wish we saved some of. We treated that like this town treated bridge budgets. Like we blew all of our money on that room. All right, Mike, what's your last one?
Everybody wants to be taller, but you want to do it fashionably. If you wore stilts, you would be the clown that Ryan said we might be creating right now. But instead, platform shoes. No matter how tall you are, whether they're boots or heels, you're putting these things up on platforms, and they look great and should come back.
Yeah. I mean, do you want fishes swimming in the bottom?
Yes, of course.
Okay, yeah, stupid question. Greg, what do we got?
You better take care of that fish. That's a living thing.
Oh, yeah, I'd feed it.
So I had never noticed this until we started watching the movies from this year. Almost a pirate-like ruff around the sleeve or around the actual like collar, such that like almost any ensemble can be made to look like you're in Austin Powers. But like that sort of like, like ruff or something, or a crimped pirate little affectation.
Pirate stuff. Yeah.
Pirate stuff.
All right, so I am dealing with wide lapels, peasant blouse, long jacket, corduroy anything, platform shoes, and ruffled anything. And I'm going to give this to Mike. This is wide lapels. And this is officially the sexiest mountain of heads I've ever seen, with our bell bottoms, our big glasses, our peace sign, and our wide lapels. I feel like this is done by a group of people who don't know what 1971 is, but have seen it in the movies. So we accomplished that. Mike gets the point there. Chuck takes the lead with 9, Greg with 8, Mike with 7. A heated battle. When we come back, more about McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Taste buds, let's get back to it. I ask you this. How does Altman's use of overlapping dialogue, ensemble casting, and loose plotting create a sense of realism or chaos? Did Altman, in a way, and I love this question that I wrote, give birth to mumblecore? Let's go with Mike.
Sure. Let's just focus on the last part of that question. Did he give birth to mumblecore? Yeah. Would the puffy chair have existed without Altman's films?
Without
Probably
his puffy necklines and sleeves?
And it's all velour, which we did not cover in the last segment, but everything was goddamn velour. What you get out of smashing everybody in and talking over each other, it is that naturalistic feel, which inherently makes it feel revisionist because you're not on the Jungle Cruise track, or at least you don't feel like you're on the Jungle Cruise track. It feels like a video game that you could explore everything. And it is when he does zoom in, it's not where you'd expect, and it's always kind of funny. So you could see guys 30 years later being like, oh, let's just focus in on that. We're going to be real. And not like, haha, I just told a joke funny, but isn't everything so ludicrous? And that is funny.
In fact, the jokes that are told in this movie by the characters are all awful.
The thing that Altman does, I think, is really effective is I had heard that this movie, that the audio is often hard to hear. Mm-hmm. But I think it's very clearly there's two types of audio. There's the stuff that's supposed to overlap and kind of sound like murmuring. And it's like the audio, the track almost indicates to you, yeah, you can't really hear this. It's just kind of background talking. Maybe you'll pick up an odd word. But then it will clear like the clouds in the sky. And one particular, like for a home run line, one particular moment is when one guy says to another, hey, I think I'm just going to shave my beard.
Oh, yeah.
And the second guy's like, why would you do a thing like that? And then it cuts so fast.
I love that subplot. Like 3 scenes later, we see, hey.
He's like, hey. And by the way, I have to say, it's almost always a huge mistake to shave your beard. When this guy does it, he has the strongest chin I've ever seen. Yeah, obviously shave your beard if your chin fucking looks like that.
Why do you think we have beards?
Exactly, yeah. His chin already like has the shape of a chin. So you don't even need the beard. What are you doing with one? You're a faker.
I think that in some ways that is the most famous scene in the movie, just because like this is like the gender swap of this movie where women are in charge of the business and men are gossiping about hairdos. I think is so important to it, but it's just the casual way they talk about it. Chuck, what if you were sending somebody to watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller? What would be like the Altman thing to either get them pumped about or maybe even warn them about? Like, just so you know, this movie sort of works like this.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about that very question because the first time I watched this, I said I can't understand what they're watching, what they're saying, and so I immediately go and turn on the subtitles, right? And so all of a sudden, I'm following everything. But after having seen it several times now, I'm like, whoa, that's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah.
Really, the right way is to embrace that you're going to hear this noise and you are going to hear what you're supposed to hear. But you're going to hear a lot of, like we said, the mumble.
It's a lot like if you're playing Red Dead and you're walking through a bar. You know, like we as the camera's our eyes and we just hear what we hear. And we'll stick around for what we stick around for.
And a lot of times when you parse it, if you do, because I watched it both ways. The first time I watched it, I was like, I'm going to go in clean, no subtitles, even though I put subtitles on for everything.
Yeah,
now.
so do I.
Yeah. I'm eating my chips while I'm watching things. So I got to have my subtitles on. But I was like, okay, this is obviously a choice. And so I have to engage with the artist and try to experience it. And then within 2 minutes, you're into dialogue that you can fully hear.
But we should be clear, though. MASH has overlapping dialogue. It became after McCabe, it became Altman's like the thing that he was most known about. McCabe and Mrs. Miller did not have the sound equipment to record any of the dialogue. So this is what they had. They were forced to have this shitty sound backing.
And I've read that book, The Raging Bulls and Easy Riders. And you do have the same impression that Warren Beatty did when he first sat down to watch the movie. With the first like 4 minutes, you're just like, Jesus Christ, I can't hear a thing. And he was sitting there in a theater watching it and being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But then you do adapt. And when you finally do put the subtitles on, the things you're missing in that murmur is like, that gun is from Sweden.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine, dude. You didn't need to know that.
Just people going, I love beans. The other standout thing here is Leonard Cohen, not Elmore Leonard. Both Mike and Chuck got a point for Greg calling him Elmore Leonard, just because that proves that Mike and Chuck are younger than Greg. But Leonard Cohen's songs here, is this a help or a hindrance?
It to me, you have to. It took a while. More than the mumbling and overlapping, and more than the loose plotting most of the movie. For what I had to get used to was that every once in a while, this guy would sort of half sing things that sort of kind of had to do with what was going on in the movie.
This is so disrespectful.
And
I was nervous about this question because are we going to get the Cohen-Ive up in arms?
Oh my gosh.
But at first I was like, what? They couldn't get like Simon Garfunkel to do the whole movie? They got this fucker? But then
Garfunkel was being in his own movie, Mike.
It is...
Dude, bad Leroy Brown.
It is incredibly lonely, even when it's like hopeful and wistful, and really helps build and feels like it's building the bridge from 1902 when it takes place to 1971 and being like, they're just like us.
Chuck, what do you think about Leonard?
So there's basically 3 songs that get played over and over and over again. And what's really kind of brilliant is that even though the songs were not written for the movie, you are intrinsically trying to apply the words to the character. So like when it talks about the stranger and he has the golden arm that's stealing the cards that is now rusting, you're like, oh, that's McCabe. It's glorified, right? And Sisters of Mercy, every time that the whores or the prostitutes are coming around, that's playing, or any time that, and I think the one that for me is most effective is Winter Lady, which is essentially the song that's played every time Julie Christie's character is on screen. And I personally thought that it helped to romanticize some of the more harshness of the movie. And then when you add that with the cinematography that Vilmos was going with, I just thought it made, like I said at the very beginning, it's an experience.
And I do think Altman is using it as like pre-rebuttal, like you wanted a normal movie, but this is what you get. Like the Sisters of Mercy plays while the prostitute is stabbing the guy who probably did something to deserve it, and it's such calm mellow music, and like normally you'd have like and he's just like, I'm going to give you nothing of what you want, but it's everything you need right now.
And if you were not paying like close attention, you would be like, oh, this is... But she gets him a couple good times with that knife. Yeah. She stabs him right in the chest and a gout of blood comes out. But the music is like really like contrapuntal or whatever contrapuntal. So like it feels like, oh yeah, everything's cool.
I will say Cohen has this way of writing where the A line like will end in something like rest here on a perch, and he'll really like send it out before we know he's coming with Presbyterian Church the next time. He sort of writes songs like the Oompa Loompas did, where we could just feel the next line coming. Chuck brought up Vilmos. Thank you for calling him that, because I don't want to tackle that last name of his. He is the cinematographer, the look of the movie. So, this isn't something that Altman is necessarily known for. I would say that this is his starkest, foggiest, snowiest, darkest, dankest, dirtiest movie. How much was that necessary in sort of showing what the time was and giving us all the feelings?
Does anyone know? The thing that really struck me was the snow at the end. Does anybody know how they did that? Because like obviously it wasn't actually snowing like that. Did they like overlay 2 images?
It was the 70s, so it was all cocaine.
So it hasn't snowed there for 20 years, right? That's what they say. And so then it starts to snow, and then by Sunday it's like 4 feet deep. Well, what they did is they filmed things in reverse. So you would have at the very end, like a few days later when it's starting to melt, but there's still snow, they would film the scenes with at the very beginning where McCabe is going out, where people are running out to the church. And then as it's getting thicker and thicker, they're going backwards, and they're filming like where he's walking in the snow and getting hunted down by the big guy.
The last part I want to talk about with Altman is, we've already sort of hinted on this, is we get about 90 minutes of this unreal, surreal, like not Hollywood at all Western, right? Western in name only. And then we have this 30 minutes with a town saving a church and a shootout where our hero, quote unquote, kills the 3 bad guys and ends up dying anyway. Does that feel weird? I don't want to say tacked on, but does it feel like we spent all this time and we still get the Hollywood third act? Do we deserve it?
Here's why I think I think it's a fun way to end. Here's why. Because yes, it does end in the big gun battle, and so isn't that standard Western? But look at the fights are not like let's stand in the street and shoot at each other. literally the first 3 people to die in this gun battle are all gunshots to the back.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just shooting, they're hiding, and then somebody walks by, and without saying anything, you quickly just shoot them in the back. And so it's like, finally, McCabe does do, again, because Altman just seems to be bouncing back and forth between standard Western, anti-Western, and a revisionist Western. He does, at the very last second, do a cool move, and he shoots Butler right between the eyes with a Derringer, the most manly of guns. And that is kind of like, that's the only time where you're like, okay, maybe this guy, what? You're going back and forth between like, is it just BS or is he actually a shootist? And you never know where to land on that. And then he does cap the guy right in the between the eyes.
Where I've landed, and this is just like from watching it, right, a few times and thinking about it, is that he flinches so hard when somebody first brings up Roundtree. But the realism in that is he's not like swaggering about it. He's not even like, I did what I had to do. It fucking haunts him that he killed this guy. So he just tries to run from violence that he knows is in him, because he's generally not that violent of a guy.
And we think of this myth making thing is that everybody wants their own myth to be huge. And I bet often, a lot of times, you don't. He is trying to run from this reputation. The other thing too about the shootout, Greg, that you're talking about is like the realism of it is everybody has this sense of like fuck.
Yeah.
And that's just not something we see with cowboys in movies, you know?
Yeah. The only cool move done in the whole shootout is the kid. And after he gets shot in the back, the way he pulls out his gun and fires and like fans the hammer to get 2 shots off, and he hits McCabe twice, center of mass. That's the only like cool move. Even Butler, who is like, you think must be like the ultimate hard ass, he like with a rifle, he shoots a guy. He shoots McCabe from like 100 feet away. Anybody could do that shit. I could do that shit.
Because it's movies versus real life. Even hardened killers don't want to almost die.
Oh yeah, dude.
I love the line where Butler, after he questions McCabe about his exploits as Pudgy McCabe, he turns to Sheehan and just says, "This man has never killed anybody in his life." And 30 minutes later,
he kills that
dead.
guy.
Yeah, he kills that guy, and he kills all of them. I mean, it's like almost like as soon as Sears and Hollander, decide that they're going to cut town, they're essentially signing his death warrant. To send these guys in.
That scene between Butler and McCabe, that's our like Pacino De Niro heat in the restaurant moment, and it's like,
you know what?
That's when it's like the most well-written dialogue instead of the most real dialogue, and you can absolutely understand why Beatty, who is this like stud, awesome superhero, is quivering, because Butler fucking owns that moment.
That's their shootout. That's their shootout fight.
This was Hugh Millet's first movie. I mean, he was just some guy that like he was in real estate that Altman had met when he was traveling, and he had him come in and read this. And when we're talking about Altmanisms, he's using this literally unknown, and even the kid Manfred Schultz is unknown. I don't know what else he's ever done before, but Hugh Millet is just, I thought he owned that every scene that he's in, he is just captivating.
Oh yeah, he has such a profound effect every time. Like the very first time he comes onto screen, they're having like a hoedown, and we all know the central rule of hoedown is you do not interrupt. You never stop somebody in the middle of a hoedown. You don't wake up a sleepwalker. You do not stop someone in the middle of a hoedown. But just the presence of these 3 guys rolling into town, they're like 3 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and he turns his horse around so that everybody can get a look at his long gun. And then the music stops and everybody just goes back into their houses. And that like moment is like the effect he has every single time he's on the screen. One thing I love is that cowboys have best friends. And I love that they are nice enough so that they don't get bent out of shape if their best friend has another guy who's his best friend.
My best friend's best friend. Yeah. Okay. We got to take a break. But when we come back, it's time to try out a new segment. Welcome to IP Freely, where we take intellectual properties of the present and we see what would have happened to them in 1971, and we do it freely. That's how we thought of the name. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host for this segment. Tonight, we are going back to 1971 and imagining what if the MCU was around back then. It took Marvel a long time to get their movies off the ground. There was basically nothing but stinkers until Iron Man, and I include Blade in that. Do you guys include Blade in that?
Fuck you forever.
I'm gonna say no. Blade is a good movie. It brought a lot of people joy, especially weirdos in high school.
Okay, so that's the thing, Mike, is you're going to tell us your director, their movie, and you're going to sort of pitch it to us. We're going to try and help you because you're going to need it. Go.
I want the melancholy with the funny. And do you know a director who's great at that? Is Hal Ashby. I'll just list off the movies of his I have seen. Harold and Maude, The Last Detail, which we covered, Shampoo, which we covered, and Being There. He's very good at being like, isn't this so funny? Isn't this so sad and lonely at the same time? You know who's that? Peter Parker, a.k.a. The Amazing Spider-Man. I want Hal Ashby's Peter Parker. And this is even the modern movies where like, isn't he such a loser? Not really. They don't really cover how sad Peter is the way the comics do. And I think Ashby could, and deal with a giant, vast cast. So already in this movie, and I know so many other people, this is where they go wrong. It's Parker versus the Sinister Six right away. He's been Spider-Man. He is poor. He's out of high school, and he's just a starving photographer trying to bumblefuck his way through the city.
You don't see this instead as like a movie called Peter and Aunt May, where two people are in a relationship and trying to figure out how much they love each other?
December
romance.
December, May. Yeah. There you go.
That could be part of it. Let's make it less sexual.
Okay. Who do we see as like a good, if we had to pick one main villain in a Hal Ashby movie besides Society, which Spider-Man villain are we doing?
In a Hal Ashby movie. You know what? I'm just going to lift from who I know he's worked with before and who can do well. It's Randy Quaid as Rhino.
I do think that Rhino comes with a bunch of sadness and melancholia. So yeah, that makes sense. Chuck, Greg, what do we think?
I like it. I mean, are you looking for like, you want the gritty realism, right, Mike? Are you going to go to Gwen Stacy town? Because I mean, if you like the lovable loser angle,
it could be fully just based on Spider-Man Blue, that graphic novel that redid Gwen Stacy in the most heartbreaking way.
Okay, and so does the movie start with Gwen Stacy's death?
Yes.
That feels Ashby-esque, is that now we're just doing all the hard parts after a trauma instead of all the stuff before.
I do agree with the idea that like we have embraced Peter Parker, and he used to be like a loser who especially in his personal life, couldn't win. And too often he has like enjoyed a lot of success.
Yeah, too often. Let's bring that guy down. All right, Mike, Hal Ashby's Spider-Man sounds pretty good to me. Greg, where are we going?
Okay, so I'm going to start with my property. 1993, young Greg, just getting into comics. He's ready for a fresh new take on comics, that commentary on everything that's come before in the Marvel universe, and it is Marvels.
So you're taking all of them.
By Keith Busiek and painted by Alex Ross. And here's why. Marvels has the sort of like the color palette that I think would work really well with the 70s. And part of what I like about Marvels is it goes basically through the entire history of the Marvel universe up until 1993 when it's made, and it tells it through the story of just a reporter whose life is impacted by being close to these superheroes. So he lives in Manhattan, he takes pictures of the superheroes, but like it engages with like the emotional experience of being like, if they're gods on Earth, what does that say about the rest of us? And he literally like this guy, what's his name again? It's Phil.
Yeah.
Sheldon?
Phil Sheldon. He like, at one point he breaks off an engagement because he's like, I don't know what this means now that there's superheroes. And they become like the background of his life. But the comic still features like the big moments. Galactus coming.
The arrival of the X-Men.
Human Torch fighting. So there are some big cinematic moments. So I'm going to need a director who is both good at like the huge moments, but then also constantly bringing us back to the very human core of all of this. And I don't care if he's only made a made-for-TV movie. I'm willing to put it on the line and say, get me this kid, Steven Spielberg. I think he's got what it takes to make a blockbuster movie.
Okay, so right away we're saying Richard Dreyfuss is Phil Sheldon.
I'm Richard Dreyfuss. I'm so tired of all these Marvels.
You turkeys.
And it actually goes up until, you know what the last issue of that is? Because it's a 4-issue miniseries.
Gwen Stacy?
It's Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
And for kids at home, there was one like unchangeable fact in the Marvel universe for years. And it was that unfortunately Gwen Stacy fucking died. Spider-Man tried to save her. He basically did, but it didn't work. And she died even though he was able to catch her with the web. It broke her back. And like in the 90s, we thought that was never going to change in a billion years. I'm glad that it has, that they've revitalized the character, but there was something about, and so that's why Marvel's ended with that way. Like, no, like the soul of this universe, this beautiful person dies, and it's kind of our chief hero's fault. And the way Phil Sheldon feels about that is like, fuck these guys. He's been kind of going back and forth, Altman-esque, between like, I love these guys, I hate these guys. I love these guys, I hate these guys. And we think it's going to end with him being like, no, they're great. But at the end, it kind of ends with him being like, they actually can't, like, they can't save each other and they can't save us.
Okay, I have a question, though, because there is sort of an issue of Marvel's missing, and it is what happens in the early 70s. So do you guys want to, and this is Spielberg, so I don't know if this is his right up his alley, but do we want Phil Sheldon covering Blade, Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, Luke Cage, Iron Fist? Would that help
those
our box
gritty,
office?
Surface level 70s characters?
Right.
I would love it, yeah. And it's nice because then it creates a chapter that doesn't appear in the original.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
And you could almost do a 4 rooms but good, where have for the Iron Fist Luke Cage bring in a kung fu director to do that sequence.
Do you doubt Spielberg's kung fu-ery?
I would never.
Okay, good.
But yes.
All right, we got Spielberg's Marvels. Chuck, what do you want to pitch to us tonight?
Well, I'm going to give my best here. Obviously, I'm going to say I am outclassed by your
nerdiness
of knowledge of nerd comic books here. But also, I have to say, I am just really off of the Marvel train lately. I am like all DC right now. And you know, James Gunn, he's got a new script that he's shopping around, and you know, he's going to go to our man of the evening, Robert Altman, and he immediately loses it in a pile of meeting notes. So picture this. Altman gets handed the Teen Titans, but it's set in the Injustice universe because, you know, what would be a great evil corporation for our team to react against would be none other than a Superman who has just gone full authoritarian, and the Justice League is being run like some giant corporate government. So Altman's going to point the camera at the kids, the Titans, and they're just basically disillusioned interns of this moral empire. For every scene's a committee meeting. Robin can't finish a resignation letter. Cyborg's trying to unionize everybody. Raven's leading mindfulness sessions for henchmen, and Kid Flash, well, he's just running memos between departments because email requires an authorization. So there's no fighting of villains. There's a lot of all the overlapping dialogue with dolly zooms followed by camera zooms. And the big climax is this crazy Peace Day telethon that crashes halfway through while Kid Flash is running in circles trying to keep the lights on. So it's really not a movie about saving the world. It's really about surviving that soul-sucking, inane meeting that will never end, that will ultimately save the world. So,
okay, so
it's like MASH with capes.
I love it.
Like we're thinking Keith Carradine as Nightwing.
I'm thinking
Does he have the butt?
Manfred Schultz has got to be in here somewhere,
Sure.
and Keith Carradine.
Yeah.
Shelley Duvall. What was the Wonder Woman?
Donna
sidekick?
Troy.
Donna Troy.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely put Shelley Duvall in here. I would not mind seeing her recast as a variation of Raven.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I like it. Like, I like kind of like the banality of evil angle. It almost feels like Altman's version of Generation V, the Boys spinoff.
And yeah, the fact that like,
it was totally the V, the Boys.
There's never just that fight that you want as a movie audience because they're just always talking about resignation letters and stuff like that, and you can only hear. So I've got Hal Ashby's Spider-Man, Spielberg's Marvels, and Altman's Teen Titans. I want to see all of them. I'm most intrigued by Altman's Teen Titans, but that's DC, and the segment was Marvel. 5 points each to Greg and Mike. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, more McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Taste buds, I'm going to change my question a little bit because we have barely said the words Julie or Christie or Mrs. or Miller at all. So, Chuck, we're going to you. Mrs. Miller, huh? What do we think of this character and performance?
Well, first of all, Julie Christie. My first film that we covered with her in it was Nicholas Rhodes' Don't Look Now, which is fantastic. And to see her come into this film was actually recommended to us. And so as soon as I heard it was Julie Christie, I'm like, I'm totally in for this. And what I liked about her in this film is that she has just a inner strength about her, and just just all of the know-how for what she needs to do. She has a plan. She's not playing second fiddle to the guy. And I really thought that her character was not only strong, but I just thought she played her so well. Like little things that she would do. She would have this glove, and this glove would have a hole in it. And so every now and then she would kind of notice the hole and then cover it up. And that I thought was just such little character building with her. I really liked that. She's
always a lady unless you put 4 eggs in front of her, and then she is going to go to town.
This movie basically says that it's like a cowboy movie, but it's primarily a business movie, and it's kind of like here are cowboy businessmen, and she is the true like soul of business in the movie. She's the one who ultimately knows how to do it. If you think about it, when you watch the movie, you have a tendency to think like McCabe is blowing it. And he is blowing it. But so are the 2 guys that just head out of town without sealing the deal. He should have made the deal with them, but they should have made the deal with him. Well, because they get these other guys killed. They don't really get what they want in the end.
Every scene in this movie, all the way to the kid and the other kid, the kid of evil and the kid of good, is just a nonstop negotiation. And the negotiations are usually upended or stopped or made terrible by fucking male ego. Yeah. And for her to skate in there and just be like, all of her initial conversations with McCabe are just so matter of fact, and she can take a little loss if it means the ultimate victory, and she can see her opponent because everyone always is. Like, that's what, has her get what she wants, and what she wants is reasonable too, because she talks about halfway through the movie, is like, all I want to do is like set up a boarding house in San Francisco. I don't want to take over the country. Yeah. I don't want to own the world. I don't want to be the coolest dude in the room. And so I just have this goal that I'm going to get to. Fuck you if you get in my way. And that's also what makes her stand out, is everybody else is, what is the Leonard Cohen line? Like, you're just going to sit there forever waiting for that higher card. Yeah. And it's never going to come, dude. You're going to die before that.
And it's also the not wanting to be the coolest person in the room. She constantly is. I think it also helps that she's from the UK and is in this literal backwoods town. So she's inherently interesting to all these people. And she can see McCabe's a bullshitter because she is. She's just as much of a fraud of being like, look at me, I'm all high end. Oh, I'm a high end, isn't it? Like,
mark it down. 66 minutes into the podcast.
Well, she tells McCabe exactly who she is at the very beginning. I'm a whore, and I know how to run a whorehouse. Like, what are you going to do when it's that time of the month, or they're supposed to have the time of the month, but it doesn't happen? What are you going to do then? And
McCabe is as dumbfounded as he is in any other scene. Like, I never thought of any of that.
Well, it's funny. You can see it on his face when he brings the first group of girls back to the town. And then the guys start manhandling them right away. They fight the guys off. And then he goes upstairs with the girls, and they're talking to each other. And he looks so out of his depth. Yeah. When it's all boys, when it's boy time, he's good about being the best boy, like the top boy. But when it's girls, he doesn't really know how to interact with them. And that's why before she even shows up, he in the back of his head knows he needs her. The tragedy of her character is, this is still, she can be the biggest badass. She can have True Grit, like the girl from True Grit. But ultimately, it's still a gendered experience, and he won't listen to her because she's a woman. And so she's Cassandra-like in her, this is how it's going to go, dude. I am telling you, this is how it's going to go. This is what you need to do. And he's like, well, I'm the guy, so I don't know what to say to that, but I'm not going to do that. I'll figure it out myself, thanks. And
that's not a bad McCabe.
There's something so tragic in watching her. And ultimately, that's why I think she disappears into the opium den, because she's like, well, I can't protect myself from this world any other way. I can't actually affect the outcome the way I need to, because they will just ultimately right at the end be like, no, I disregard you.
And I think there's a lot of evidence when she's sober and when she's not that she realizes without saying that she hitched her wagon to the wrong horse.
Yeah.
You know, like I think she slowly comes to that conclusion, and long before Warren Beatty or McCabe does.
And like he catches feelings, and you think that they're like going to be in those feelings together, but then there's several times where it seems like she has feelings, but it's like, no, he just is romantically inclined towards her. She thinks it's a bad idea.
And she's high on opium. That's anytime you think she might be catching it, she's high.
And she always points over to the little chest, you know, hey, please put your money in the chest, you know, before we do anything here.
But I also think even if I don't think is ever fully romantic, she does grow fonder of him right through. But I think that is the only power play she has, is to put like, even though he should respect her and sometimes listens, he keeps like shoving her away because she is just a woman when she brings up a smart idea. So the only power she can actually pull over him is like to hurt him by being like, well, you're still going to pay me. And like,
I think
it's
Do you think that at the end, though, she's kind of pitying him a little bit? Like, you know, at the very end when she's leaving out, because she already knows that the foregone conclusion with Butler. She knows what's going to happen. She knows what's in front of him. And so she leaves him in the middle of the night.
I think that there's some pity love going on, which thank God for that, or I would have never experienced love. But like, I think that like she can finally be as real with him as possible because she does know it's a foregone conclusion. She also like, there's like this romanticism about her lack of romanticism about her situation. She's so aware of it that she does throw herself into opium, and she does throw herself into the much more addictive drug, as far as I'm concerned, books, and sort of reads like that. But when it comes to actual decisions, you know, she's just like, this is my lot in life. I will achieve what I can, instead of all the dudes who are like, oh no, I'll probably be fucking president someday, or senator, like when he's talking to the lawyer.
Because she has that old woman's, a woman with ambition, that old dilemma, which is to enact my ambition in the world, I have to get a guy to help me do it. But then ultimately that guy is going to be like, I don't have to listen to you. And so like she is like kind of kept from the world because she can't interact with it like head on. She needs some intermediary, and they will all fail her. I think that definitively she does not have. I think that because she's complicated, she kind of has feelings, kind of doesn't. But that moment where he's like gonna unbridle his like love for her, and she's like, "You don't have to say this." Take it from somebody who's been in that boat a lot of times. That means a woman is broadcasting that she does not really have those full feelings for you too. When
you're not going to like my response to what you say.
When she tells you you don't have to say it, what that means is if you never say it, then I don't have to respond to it, and we don't have to take this to a bad place. But if you do say it, then I'm going to be like, I think we're friends and business partners, but I also think you're a walking corpse.
Yeah, and honestly, like whether it's 1902 or 2025
or 2002,
also
the present time.
It's just also so long ago. Was it the Wild West in 2002? I don't know. I'm nervous about your answer, or I'm nervous about your reaction to when I don't respond with the same feelings that you have for me.
Also, ultimately, you've got a stoner and you've got a drinker, and I'm sorry, stoners got to be with stoners, drinkers got to be with drinkers. It's just, that's how it is in the army. This is your
most conservative take.
Yeah.
It's different energies.
It's different energies. You got the dopers got to be doping together. The drinkers got to be drinking together. They can't go into business together.
And the crossfaders are leading both groups.
The crossfaders are just passed out.
Yeah, they're so done. We have talked a lot about what Mrs. Miller does, but let's talk about what the movie thinks about what Mrs. Miller does for a living. And this is 2 movies about sex workers in a row, which is, 1971. We probably have 5 more. But what do we think that Altman and McCabe and the movie in general thinks about their, what is the display as far as their job goes?
I think the movie and Altman take Mrs. Miller, this is the only sort of power a woman could have in this kind of town, in the frontier. And so I don't sense any judgment from the film itself and the creators behind it. It is just like she's getting hers kind of better than any of the other people trying to, because they'll grumble to each other about not wanting to bathe, but they respect her. and listen to her. Versus Sheehan, he's the first businessman in this town, and they shit on him to his face all the time.
She says $5 for the front tier, $10 for the back tier. So
but that scene that you referenced, when the guy says like, "How much for Mrs. Miller?" and the lady says $5, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna do it then."
Yeah, he's grumbling about it. He's like, "God damn it, she better."
And the way she's just like, "All right, let's go," and then she's like, to the girl, she's like, "You turn this crank because that's gonna make the music." And then she grabs him and she's like, "All right, you're not shy, are you?" Like that is the opinion of the movie as well, which is that like as your own personal enterprise, there's nothing wrong with sex work in that way. I do think the movie kind of squints at the idea that like the first women he gets, he's buying them off a guy, and there's very clearly the implication of violence, and he's very much obviously making Alma do it, even though she seems like a child.
At the place he goes to, like, it is the worst. I mean, there are the inflatable tube arm guys outside. Like, this is a used prostitute car lot. Chuck, I want to talk to you about the scene between Mrs. Miller and Shelley Duvall after Shelley Duvall's husband dies, where Shelley Duvall basically has to start working at the brothel. Mrs. Miller lays out, because Shelley Duvall is nervous, and she also says that I'm very small. You know, I'm not built physically for this life. And so Mrs. Miller sort of lays out her, if not the movies, then at least her thoughts on sex work. And I thought that scene did a pretty good job of sort of showing us what we're supposed to be thinking about Mrs. Miller and her job.
Can I just say, anatomically, some women are small. You shouldn't, if someone says I'm built a certain way, you shouldn't be like, like she might literally be very small, and that's a real consideration, and it's a real thing that happens. And so, and then Mrs. Miller takes off her dress, and she's like, "Oh, you are small." She just said that.
And what works as good for people like Shelley Duvall is olive oil. If you just use a little bit of olive oil.
Ew.
That'll help. That's the Popeye laugh and the air horn, which means it is time for speed round. How do you square a circle?
You
shoving a 4x4 up a
flying
mule's
frog's
ass?
I do not understand this joke.
While he's in the air. Because, okay, the butthole is round. Right,
it's round.
But then you shove a 2x4 in there, and that's now the circle is going to accommodate the 2x4. It's kind of about sexual violence, and then the butthole is going to accommodate the 2x4. Therefore, a circle is now becoming a square. So you're squaring as like a verb, squaring the circle.
McCabe is very much the Andrew Dice Clay of 1902. None of his jokes make sense or are funny, but the vulgarity in itself is so shocking that people laugh.
And I'm nervous to not laugh. And how the way that he always takes his cigar and like brings his arm around his head to smoke on it.
But isn't it that bully humor? Everybody understands what he says has the cadence of a joke.
Right.
And everybody, as long as he's with smaller fish, the second he hits a bigger fish, he doesn't know what to do, and he's just the stammer king of New England. But when he is only with these little guys, then they just hear these jokes and they fall all over themselves to laugh.
His most told joke is the frog slapping its ass, and that's when Sears has the power because he says it to him, and he's the first person to go, "What?"
Yeah,
but it's his most told joke, but not his only joke with frogs. He's just frog humor is big.
Are you shitting me, Ryan?
Would you rather never listen to music again, or have it all sound like that tinny, plinky 1902 MIDI version?
Are you talking about the violin or like the gear work, like the record player thing?
The records that are just have holes punched in them.
I think I would.
Sounds like a giant music box.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Yeah,
I think all that does is underscore how you don't get to hear music, and I think the guy with the fiddle is the same thing. Like, sure, that's adjacent to music, but it just reminds me of what we're not hearing in kind of the same way that when they bring in the original group of women, it's like. Are these really the women you guys have all been dying?
They're all starter home versions of whatever they want to do. Would old-timey saloons be more fun if you could play other card games like Magic: The Gathering?
Oh, hell yeah.
Imagine it, dude. You're coming in there. Some people still playing poker, right? That's what they want to play. But you come in off the dusty trail. You got your goblin deck. You got your 20-sided die. You're ready to go. You sit down at a table, and you're like, let's go. We'll play Commander format if you want.
I will say it'll somehow smell
I wish I had a
worse
fucking
than it
gun to
currently
Derringer
did.
right now. The answer is no. Chuck gets a point there. If you had to rename McCabe and Mrs. Miller with a title that fits Altman's tones better, what would it be?
I
That's
think
a
I would just call it like murmur.
Yeah. 2 points for Greg and Chuck for looking right at each other, hearts between the eyes, and doing the same thing. That is it for Speed Round. Congratulations. When we come back, it's time to hand out some awards. Who wants to guess how many Academy Awards this movie was nominated for?
Obviously, best
5.
sound.
Best sound, obviously. I would think like 7 or 8.
Yeah. I mean, we in one way or another, we all said it was like the best movie, our favorite movie, something like that. So yeah, 5. 5 with Mike.
It was nominated for Best Actress, Julie Christie. It lost to Clute, which I can't argue with because I think that Mrs. Miller was going to have a supporting actress in this movie. But
the book is just called McCabe.
Yeah. Just the one nomination, and that was it. Time, I think, has been kind to this movie. Before we dive into awards where points are given out for sure, Greg has 28, Mike has 27, and Chuck, still reeling from that DC pick, has 22. But this can all change here. Okay, I want to start off with Chuck's music moment.
Well, I know you guys were not loving the diegetic music of the fiddler sitting around, but man, there's something that I really loved about that guy. Every time like the pastor would come in, he would start playing Ta Ra Ra Boom Da. And as Mrs. Miller is shoving in those 4 eggs down her throat, he's playing Beautiful Dreamer. And yeah, I think that guy had a great little violin. And if he didn't know what to do, he would just play a scale.
Yeah.
The original riff, the scale. Mike, what do you got?
I have to agree. It is Mrs. Miller scarfing down 4 eggs and stew while Beautiful Dreamer is playing badly, letting you know exactly what these characters are in for. If you had hope, how bad this sounds and what that song is letting you know they will not get their dreams.
Is that when all of the sex workers are hopping around in the bath while they eat? Or is that a different part?
That was the second time we heard
this
the
is
song.
the initial meeting.
Yeah, this is when they first meet, and he's like, what? She's like 4 eggs and the stew, and he's just like drinking his whiskey.
I do think that if they combined the two and had the naked people jumping around in a bath while you eat, sort of like a medieval times Casa Bonita theme restaurant.
Sure.
I think it could work.
Blue Night.
Greg, what do we got?
Do you think McCabe and Mrs. Miller are a great pair? Because they both fucking love eggs. They
do.
mostly just eat eggs.
But one's cooked and one's raw. It really says a lot about the two of them.
I am
It's a
going
point for Ryan.
I'm going to go with something I mentioned earlier, which is I did not like the sound of that guy's fiddling, but the way it stops when the baddies roll into town and the party just ends right there, that hard stop where the music cuts out and you realize that it was actually giving you some comfort, and that was kind of a nice moment, and now probably those moments are over in the movie. I thought that was extremely effective.
Do you know what's fucked up at that point is there's one guy jigging on the ice and doing like sort of slidey jigs. Everybody leaves, but he's so drunk and he just keeps going, and none of your friends grab you.
He's dedicated to his craft.
We've been there.
And I guarantee you, just watching that scene, I can tell you for a fact, the Mighty Mighty Bosstones have watched this movie. I'm going to give that one to Greg because, yeah, it's a record scratch moment without the record scratch sound. Let's go to Greg for fashion choice.
Okay. Wow. Fans of coats rejoice. There are so many amazing coats to choose from. I am going to ultimately go with one of the coolest garments to ever exist, which is Mrs. Miller's like Victorian raincoat. That like cut of that coat, it's got the double shoulders, so that because it's like, you know,
so classy.
It be raining in London, and so you need the double, and it just looks like badass. Like every part of it looks sharp, and she's putting it on, and at this moment that I'm specifically thinking of, she's like, I'm bailing, I'm out, and like she looks cold and angular and austere in that coat, and I was just, and also it is a time of kind of like long coats in fashion, and so I thought it was like both. It worked for the time of the movie and also as a contemporary fashion to the 70s.
It also speaks to her whole thing of you got to spend money to make money. Like it does cost money to give people the experience that they will pay for, and that includes like I got to dress like Mrs. Miller, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, what do we got?
Jeremy Berg, we have not talked about at all. He's sort of McCabe's number 2. Like he does the bookkeeping for him. He has like the shoulder length blonde hair.
And he's like the king of proving how cool Warren Beatty is because he'll just repeat McCabe and everybody be like,
so much
up,
worse.
Yeah.
You don't have to say what he just said, Bert.
But he always has a military hat on, which in 71 we didn't get to. It was fucking huge. People come back from Vietnam as the military caps and those little glasses. Like he looks like that era of Beatle. And so yeah, it's one, it looks cool as hell even for a dork like him, and it's very 1971 in the middle of 1902.
Chuck, we have something on the table nobody's brought up. This is shocking to me. What do you got?
Well, you know, my first thing that I wrote up was, of course, the McCabe's bearskin coat, because, you know, who does not want to wear that on a nice cold winter's day? And, you know, Mrs. Miller's hairstyle was also a choice. But the one thing that I wrote down that we don't see, and in fact, we can't smell, but it is mentioned, is McCabe's cheap Chalky Club cologne that he wears. You know, suddenly I was smelling like really bad cologne.
I have to tell you, I think that's such a good answer because sex workers are very astute at like the different signs of wealth, because you want to know if you've got like a real high class customer on your hands. And so she's like, okay, he's got this marker of wealth, this marker of wealth, this marker of wealth, but he smells like Dracar Noir.
Yeah.
So probably he wears grocery store cologne.
I was going to say that the one thing that hasn't changed between clubs back then and clubs now is it doesn't matter how dirty or sweaty it is. You just smell that one guy's cologne the entire night. So I've got McCabe's cologne, Jeremy's hat and glasses, and Miss Miller's raincoat, and no points awarded. It's Warren Beatty's coat. You guys are insane.
I love how the butler is like, I came up here to hunt bear.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, because I wear. Oh,
he just slowly starts taking it off.
Oh,
Jeremy, why are you having that bear coat all the time?
he wasn't wearing the bear coat after that.
Yeah, I don't need this anymore. I'll just be out in the snow, raw dogging it.
Chuck, a 1971 movie about what are we? Is it actually like 1890s? Anybody remember?
1902.
1902. Okay, so it's my second 1902 movie of the week. So showed my daughter Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy Garland, and then this. So I know all about that year, much more than 1971. Chuck, this 1971 movie that takes place in 1902, what is the cringiest moment?
Ooh, for me?
Yes, specifically for you.
No, I thought it was the overall dehumanization of people. So take, for example, the way that McCabe was haggling over the 3 chippies, you know, and just saying, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to pay, you know, more than $50. And then Butler later is talking about, you know, sending the Chinamen down with the explosives to blow up because, hey, you know what? They're only worth $50 is what their life is. But if the company foreman rules it as an accident, then, you know, it's just an accident. And I felt that was a little kind of harsh on that. So
it's a little harsh. That idea of, well, it'll just be ruled as an accident is today's capitalism. Like those same decisions are being made today.
I mean, I think that's always kind of been the way it is with mining.
Yeah.
And I love that it's a zinc mine. It's not even like a gold or a silver mine. He's like, it's $50. And he's like, and you get 65 cents a ton. I'm like, is this math working out there, actually?
All right. So I'm going to say dehumanization. Mike, what do we got?
I don't want people to think I'm into dehumanization, but I think the movie wants us to be like, oh. So I think that personally made, I love eggs. I love whiskey. Do you know what made me fucking cringe every time? And it's the only thing he eats. And also, so he's dehydrated and headachy all the time, is raw egg and a whiskey. Ew.
And Warren Beatty clearly tried to drink it, but they didn't get good shots of it.
Yeah.
So he is drinking the egg, but they didn't get that rocky, like, actual shot of it. So he does it for nothing.
Greg?
For me, my new thing is if I am sorely tempted to fast forward through the movie, that's my cringe moment. And Loverboy on the bridge. Evil Loverboy kills... evil kid kills Loverboy. And that's just so upsetting. He doesn't want to fight. He just wants to love, but he got gunned down anyway.
All good choices, but I'm going to give this one to Mike, which comes doubly devastating for me because that was going to be my suggestion for me and your new drink. And
I'll do it.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to hear. Greg, let's go to... You know what? Before we go to the big two, let's go to recommendation. What, if you enjoyed McCabe and Mrs. Miller, what did this make you think of that you want to tell people about?
I think it was in part the setting, also because it's so focused on a mining town, also because it's focused like primarily on business. I was like thinking about Deadwood the entire time I was watching this, and I will tell you, Deadwood does something really interesting with one of the seasons. There's always this one big guy in town, Dan, and then suddenly they move. The bad guy moves a bigger big guy into town. And it really makes you think, like, at this time, so removed from civilization, just a really big guy is like totally changes the landscape of the town. And that's what happens in this. It's a small gang, but it's basically this one hard case comes in, and it's also attached to business. And I just thought that like that mix of violence and business and the frontier really made me think of Deadwood.
I watched the ultimate movie version of that last night, which is Frankenstein. You build that big guy, and you are in charge until he turns on you. Mike, do you also have Deadwood?
I was going to talk about
and
Deadwood.
What is your pick?
And how everybody who thinks they're tough in town until real business comes in, like when Hearst comes in or the Pinkertons, and then they have to band together. They're mortal enemies. And then they're like, well, but fuck the real capitalists, right? But I'll do a hard pivot and say First Cow, which
I kind of thought you might do that one, Mike.
I was going to do Deadwood. And then, but I had First Cow on my bed. A very quiet, contemplative, what are these people's actual lives like during this time?
Yeah, I think Kelly Reichert has also seen McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Girl.
Chuck, what do we got?
Well, I've already mentioned this film, which was Nick Rogue's Don't Look Now. I like Julie Christie a lot, and I would recommend people go to that film to see a lot more of her. I mean, it's more of a Donald Sutherland film.
You see a lot of him too.
You see a lot of him. Yes, you do. But it's a good film, and you find out why Warren Beatty wanted that scene removed because he was on an off again relationship with Julie Christie. But I really enjoyed that film. It's very similar to McCabe in that it's not necessarily a straightforward film that you're going to watch one time and be able to pick up on everything. It's one that demands a second viewing.
You hear that, Mike?
I really like that.
You should watch it again, Mike. Warren Beatty watched Don't Look Now and said, I quote, only I may bite her shoulder. All right, so I got Deadwood, First Cow, Don't Look Now. I'm going to nominate, I don't think I've said this before, but if you are looking for a Western that just is not like anything else, check out the movie Johnny Guitar, where Joan Crawford does not play Johnny Guitar. That's Sterling Hayden. Joan Crawford plays this bar owner who a bunch of people move into town. It's very Altman-esque in like the first 30 minutes. You're not sure totally what's going on. You're just meeting constant characters, having no idea that it's setting up every seed for everything that happens throughout the rest of the movie. This movie is wild. It's maybe a little bit too campy for what it needs, but and it is sort of thought of as like a milestone in queer movies because of the relationship between the two women in the movie. Johnny Guitar is a wild night, so please check it out. I think it would actually make a really, even though tonally and stylistically completely different, a good double feature with McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I'm going to give that one though to Mike for First Cow, who really deked us out thinking that there's no way he was going to say that, and then definitely did.
So should we, because we've talked about it, I did text the fellas and say we can't all choose First Cow. So revealed my hand there. That's business. That's negotiation, boys.
So I right away went to my second pick, Deadwood.
Yeah.
You kind of screwed yourself there, Mike.
Proving that we're the McCabes and he's the Mrs. Miller. Okay, so let's go to Chuck for director's signature moment. What is the most Altman-y thing about this movie?
Ooh. I would probably have to go with all the overlapping dialogue at the very beginning. I mean, that's his signature move that he started with, and first, this is the second of his two movies that I've seen, of course, and in MASH he also does it as well. So I'm gonna go with the overlapping dialogue.
It's so crazy how revolutionary it was. Like, it's not that wild of an idea.
Yeah,
and it was being done in Europe, but.
Have you guys ever eaten in a restaurant before? That's what it fucking sounds like.
I can't understand any of you when we go out to eat.
Or hung out with more than one friend. Mike, what do we got?
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna say specifically the opening barroom scene. It does almost feel like he turns it up more there than the rest of the movie to like exposure therapy. Like you are gonna have to get used to it.
Yeah.
And the dialogue you should listen to, Warren Beatty has a cigar in his mouth the whole scene. So even if you could understand him, you can't understand him. And it's so dark and grungy. Like everything you need to know about the movie, negotiations happens in that one scene.
True that, Greg.
So here's what I'm going to go with, because I was very inclined to say answers like that. And I have to say, we've been watching these movies for a while now, and part of what I've learned is that a movie maker trains you in the early scenes to understand the movie that he's making, and Altman really does that. Like the first scenes very much are training you to understand the dimensions of the town, what's going on there. So I'm going to go, but I'm going to say the end where the whole town comes out to fight the fire in the church. And the reason that it made an impression on me is by the time the movie ends, there's like 40 people fighting this fire, and you know them. That's the barber. That's the girl that was married to the guy that got his head caved in, and then so she became a prostitute herself. That's the guy that shaved his beard. Like you know these people by the end of the movie, and you've lived with them. And so when they all appear together, you're like, holy crap! In one movie, I learned about 40 different stories or something like that.
I was reading on the Dissolve. You can sometimes barely almost get to a page that was on the Dissolve, the defunct website. And it was about this movie by Noel Murray. And he was talking about how it took him like the 10th viewing, but Sheehan, the original saloon owner, is one of the most three-dimensional characters in movie history with 10 lines. And it's because of what the lines are, but how Altman keeps cutting back to not just him, but all the characters in here. It's masterful editing and writing and directing in that we will just give you enough, and all of these characters come to 3D, and like you start realizing why he did betray McCabe and how he did and how he thought it was funny, and then he starts to feel bad about it and doesn't speak a word.
Yes.
And that's the case with like 20 characters in this movie.
The negative space in this movie where so much is happening, and if you watch the movie enough, you understand what happens in that negative space, but you have to supply it.
And I think that the way that the movie lulls you into its wavelength means that you sort of catch on to it more. You're not trying to work out this puzzle box or figure out who done it or even care what happens. Like care in that way of like, I wonder who the big villain is. You're just like, I am immersed, So yeah, I'm going to give that one to Greg.
Before we move on, I was an HM. The way he uses zooms, because everything's so naturalistic, is so jarring. And in the beginning, he uses it. It's funny when he has the first three hookers. There's the one who has like the blue and orange beanie, and she's like, "I gotta go to the pot," and it like zooms in on his face, like 70s sitcom, like wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
And then it does it through that when he's in the church running a video game shoots, like can't use the saw, can't use that pile of wood.
Yes.
The ladder is what I'll use, and so by the end when it zooms in, when he's looking out and zooms in hardcore and the people who will kill him, it stopped being a joke and is terrifying.
But does the zoom, not a leading question, just wondering, does the zoom sort of make you guys go right back into 1971 and not all-time classic and not 1902, but make you feel like, oh, I know exactly when this movie came out?
Yeah, but but that has a negative valence to it, and I don't think it's a negative thing. I also think that
featured, not a bug.
And I also think that shot is more naturalistic than people give it credit for. That's the way our eye works. We see in general, and then we focus on the specific. And so I think that it's got a reputation, and it's kind of time bound. But I think it's a completely valid, beautiful, organic shot, really.
And thanks for bringing up the whole zoom part, because you said it earlier that at the very beginning he's training us how to think or how to view the movie, right? And what's the last shot? It's this dolly zoom into the opium den, and then finally this incredible zoom into Julie Christie's eyes, to where it's like Vilmos was saying, by the time we finished that shot, I knew what Julie Christie was thinking. And then it's almost like we go inside her and we're seeing her looking at this little vase, and
it looks like a planet or something. Yeah, it looks like you're seeing like Mars under you.
You were also doing opium when you watched?
Dude, this movie's so fucking good. Like, I want to go home and watch it. Like, I want to start watching it again right now.
Before you do that, though, tell me, or is it Chuck's turn?
I think so.
Okay, Chuck, pound for pound performance. Who did the best in this movie, regardless of screen time?
I want to say that I loved Keith Carradine. We have spoken about him all throughout this movie as the good cowboy, but he makes this entrance of he's menacing, and McCabe is walking up to him with his hand on his hip, on his gun, like he's going to draw down on him, and then. He comes there. He's just a lovable guy. He wants to find this really great whorehouse that he's heard about, and he's going to have all the women, and they ridicule him by, showing how small he is. But even then, that even endears him to you. So he's just going to Sheehan's to buy socks, and he happens to catch this kid on the wrong day, and they draw down on him, and it's almost as if. In this revisionist history, if Keith Carradine is representing the typical American cowboy mythology, boom, it's gone. It's in the drink. I thought Keith Carradine's performance in this was really good.
The entire reason for the story of Unforgiven is because one sex worker laughs at the size of a bad guy's penis. And then we see a scene so similar in this movie where they come out and this dude is getting stabbed to death by a sex worker. And Keith Carradine in this movie, he's in the room and he's like, I don't care who's next. I'm going to have you all. And they start giggling and he starts laughing sort of with them. And you can see on his face, wait, I'm not sure what they're laughing about. Wait, I don't care. And that whole like Clint Eastwood butler ego of the demon kid that shoots the nice kid. That's not there. And that's so refreshing in this movie. It is, I can see an argument of like, was he necessary? But the more you watch the movie, the more you realize like, absolutely. Like he needed to be there just, even if it's just a foil for everyone else. Mike, who you got?
We talked about him as well earlier. It's, I think, the Alec Baldwin role in Glengarry Glen Ross. It's Hugh Malay's coming in and just fucking stealing the show. And, the hierarchy of power has fully shifted in the universe of McCabe and Mrs. Miller. When
is this the Black Adam of the movie?
He is, yeah. He's the Black Adam.
Yeah. Incredible performance. And I did not know that this was his first role, or his name was Hugh Malaise. That's a made-up name. Greg, who do we got?
A movie I think about a lot, especially considering I've only seen it once, is I Heart Huckabees. And there's a line from that movie, which is eventually, you'll be everybody. And I'm going to go with Warren Beatty, even though he has like the most screen time in the movie, because we see Warren Beatty be everybody. I think part of what this movie is doing is reminding us that the self is not a unified thing. It's kind of like a cloud, and we are at different times, different facets of like something that we think of as the self. Warren Beatty, sometimes he is top dog. Sometimes he is uncomfortable with women. Sometimes he is trying to be like a little buddy to the top dog. Sometimes he's totally in control. Sometimes he's blasted drunk. We get to see so many different versions, and he's kind of like he is at different times in the movie almost every other person in the town at different parts. Like sometimes he comes in, he's butler, but then we find out no, he's more like Sheenan. At times he's like the morose preacher. He's kind of a little bit of everybody all rolled in one, and that's a lot to do for Warren Beatty, and he pulls it off.
I think what's amazing about watching the two of them is how Miss Miller is chameleon-esque depending on the situation. Like she will change herself, and Warren Beatty will let the situation change him. He will always adapt to, I need to cower now, whereas Miss Miller is more of a control. But like you said, she's a woman in this time, so it can only go so far. All right, I'm going to give that one to Mike. Butler just rocked me on my butt. Warren Beatty's clearly the right answer, but I'm feeling crazy tonight. So.
It is pound for. That's the thing. It is pound for pound.
I know.
And that is the most electric part of the movie. So it's hard to argue with.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to find out who won tonight and how McCabe and Mrs. Miller we think will do during the Moody's and for Movie of the Year. All right, gentlemen, that is the McCabe and Mrs. Miller show. Before we go, I just want to point out a couple things. One, this is our third Altman. Woo! The Long Goodbye, Nashville, and now McCabe and Mrs. Miller. So I would like, starting with Greg, the three of you, to rank those three.
For me, it is McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and then it's The Long Goodbye, and then it's Nashville. And we're talking this is like 1A, B, and C.
And like three of your top 20 movies. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think depending on the day, McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Long Goodbye could flip for that number one spot. Today, who knows why?
Sometimes
McCabe
you want
Mrs.
the
Miller.
neo-noir. Sometimes you
Yes,
want the
exactly.
revisionist Western.
Chuck, have you
Fine
seen
by
all three of
me.
these? Oh, sorry, Mike.
I was just quoting Long Goodbye, Fine by Me. And Nashville I liked, but for whatever reason, it is not as good. Chuck?
Yeah, I definitely have McCabe as number one. Number two, I would definitely put Nashville on that one, and then Long Goodbye. But I would put MASH above either one of those two.
I would do McCabe last.
Ooh,
Yeah.
twist.
I think Nashville is my guaranteed slam dunk number one. And then I would say McCabe and Long Goodbye would switch depending on the day. This is our second Warren Beatty movie after Shampoo, and our second Warren Beatty and Julie Christie hookup after Shampoo. But our fourth Julie Christie movie, making her, I think, one of the most represented actresses in movie history. Starred in Don't Look Now, starred in Shampoo, starred in this movie, and then she's in Nashville because fucking everyone's in Nashville. And then I think our best Renee Auberjonois, what's his Star Trek name? Auberjonois?
Odo?
Yeah.
Odo, dude. Odo holding it down.
Is this your favorite Odo movie?
Honestly, Deep Space Nine was very cinematic, and so I'm still going to have to stick with
Is
Deep Space
Odo
Nine.
Sheehan?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Hardcore.
fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. The whole time I was like, I know Sheehan. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard because Odo's face mostly looks like a human face, except for like a couple of prosthetics. So it's
The
hard.
ridges, yeah.
All right, our final scores are in. Chuck, 23 points. The DC thing, I think, really hurt you. I feel like giving the other two guys 5 points each was probably
that was
a little
huge.
extreme on my
That was
side.
pretty crazy.
Greg, you have 30, but Mike has 32 and has now won 2 in a row.
Back to back.
Wow.
Chuck, just so you have some information, I lost every episode last season. So this year I decided to learn how to watch a movie.
Hey, it's just an honor to come in third. Next time I will learn to read the question.
Mike, as the victor, your prize is to tell us what nominee you can almost guarantee this movie's going to get for the Moody's.
I mean, historically, shithead is what we're going to say every week.
At the end of every single show.
There's a lot of shitheads.
Is it Evil Kid, though? Is that the shithead of the movie?
Yes. Oh, certainly. Because
Yeah.
it can't be Butler.
No, Butler's too cool and
He's
too
composed.
charming.
Yeah.
That kid
I
is a
don't make
fucking
deals.
shithead.
I was just wondering.
They had a 10-minute conversation, clearly driving to one point at the end. Oh, I don't make
I don't
deals.
work for them. They just bring
Yeah.
me in when they can't make deals. Okay, I'm starting to feel very threatened. I'm starting to put together what you're saying here.
I think that actress, this movie's going to be well represented.
The duo?
Yeah, the best
Yeah.
on-screen duo. Chuck, as the Bronze Place Award winner, can you tell us about a podcast that we should listen to that you were on? Give it to us one more time.
Yeah, it's the Cinematic Flashback podcast. It's me. It's my co-host, Matt Sargent. And Matt's just a little bit older than me, so he can actually tell me what life was like in the 70s. I was just a 10-year-old kid by 80. So, I'm just going off of my memories watching different films. We're finishing up our first season and getting ready to start recording on season 2. So
Dope.
check us out.
Is there a theme, or can you tell us anything about season 2?
Our catchphrase and how we do thumbs up or thumbs down is whether or not the film grooved or if it lost its beat. And so season 2, it is the groove deepens, and we are pairing what we consider to be a well-known movie with a lesser-known movie with a couple of specialty months. Like there's the 70s get weird with Wicker Man and Zardoz. We go to the midnight movies with Rocky Horror and Phantom of the Paradise. And then,
Nice.
of course, in October, we're going to knock out going to the mall with some zombie friends of ours and having a little fun with Dawn of the Dead.
Nice.
That is awesome. One more time with the title.
Cinematic Flashback Podcast,
And can you find it where all podcasts are sold?
where all podcasts are where all podcasts are streaming, and you can find us at cinematicflashback.com.
Awesome. Chuck, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Next
thank
time
you.
you will be at least one of these people I promise you that, because I have my finger on the pulse of the score. For Greg, for Mike, my name is Ryan. Keep watching those movies. Goofy, tell us how we did.
Perfect cast.